Hey, it's Elena. Revenge Shift tells stories you won't forget. Subscribe if you're ready. Let's begin.
My mother's house smelled like lavender and old wood and the particular brand of fabric softener she had used for 30 years without ever switching. I noticed that smell the morning of her funeral, standing in the hallway outside her bedroom while my father and brother talked in low voices in the kitchen. I noticed it again 3 days later when I came back to collect a few of her things. Her reading glasses, the photo albums, the small ceramic dish she kept on her nightstand that had always held a single piece of hard candy. Butterscotch usually. The dish was empty. Someone had already cleared it out. I am 33 years old. I work as a hospital billing coordinator at Mercy Regional Medical Center in Columbus, Ohio. I process insurance claims, I reconcile accounts, I understand better than most people what it means when numbers don't match the paperwork. It is not glamorous work. It is precise work. And precision, I have learned, is a form of protection, because the world will absolutely take advantage of anyone who isn't paying close attention. My mother knew this. She built something careful and quiet over 40 years. A paid-off house on Sycamore Hill Road, a modest savings account, a small life insurance policy, and a handwritten will that she had updated 18 months before she died. She left the house to both of us. Equal shares. 50-50. That was her word. Her handwriting. Her intention. What happened next is why I know what the inside of the Franklin County Recorder's office looks like at 2:15 on a Wednesday afternoon. 5. Full story. My mother was 67 when she died. Ovarian cancer, diagnosed 14 months before the end, managed with the particular stubborn grace that defined everything she did. She kept her Tuesday hair appointments through the second round of chemo. She sent birthday cards on time. She called me every Sunday at 7 p.m. and asked about my week with genuine interest. Even when her own week had included a port flush and 4 hours of nausea she described only as a rough patch. Her name was Dolores. Everyone called her Dee. She raised my brother Garrett and me in a 3-bedroom house on Sycamore Hill Road in Worthington, Ohio, a suburb north of Columbus where the streets are lined with old maples and the houses have been owned by the same families for decades. She bought that house with my father in 1987 for $94,000, paid it off in 2011 after 17 years of extra principal payments, and maintained it with the focused attention of a woman who understood that a house is not just a structure. It is a kept promise to yourself. My father, Roy, had been out of the picture in the technical sense since I was 16. He and my mother divorced after a long, slow unraveling that nobody talked about directly but that everyone understood had something to do with money, and Roy's ideas about whose money it was. He remarried in 2004. He showed up at my mother's funeral in a gray suit that was slightly too small, and he cried in the front row with the conviction of a man performing grief for an audience. Garrett stood next to him. They had always been close in that way that excluded everything else. Father and son with a shared vocabulary of entitlement, a shared belief that the world owed them a particular kind of landing. Garrett was 36. Worked inconsistently in residential construction, and had borrowed $12,000 from my mother over the previous 4 years in amounts she always described as just helping him get stable. He had not gotten stable. I knew all of this. I kept showing up anyway because she was my mother and the house on Sycamore Hill Road was also my childhood, and I had decided long ago that I would not let Garrett's gravitational pull drag me out of orbit from her. What I had not accounted for was what he would do the moment she was gone. Before I tell you what happened at that county office, I want to ask you something. Have you ever trusted a family system, believed that because something was written down, because there were legal documents, because your mother was careful, that you were protected? Drop a comment. Because I thought I was protected too. I'm reading every single one. The will was read 4 days after the funeral in the office of my mother's attorney, Patricia Vance, on North High Street in Worthington. Small office, 2 chairs facing a desk. A window that looked out onto a parking garage. Patricia was efficient and kind in equal measure, the way good attorneys often are, and she walked us through the document without editorializing. The house on Sycamore Hill Road, assessed at $340,000, was to be divided equally between Garrett and me. The savings account, $28,400, split evenly. The life insurance payout of $45,000, same. I remember the particular quality of silence in that office when Patricia finished reading. The kind of silence that has different textures for different people in the room. Mine was relief. My mother had been fair. She had loved us the same on paper as she had in life. Garrett's silence had a different texture. I noticed it but didn't name it. I should have named it immediately. Afterward, in the parking lot, my father took me aside. His hand on my elbow, steering me slightly away from Garrett like we were having a private conversation that Garrett was absolutely meant to overhear. I want to talk to you about the house, he said. Okay. Garrett needs stability. You know how he is. He needs something solid under him or he's never going to get his footing. I waited. The house should go to him. You've got your income, your apartment. You don't need it the way he does. Dad. Mom left it to both of us. She also would have wanted her son to have a foundation. He said the last word with a particular weight like it meant something I was too limited to understand. Boys need to build something, Nadia. That's just how it works. I looked at my father in his slightly too small suit and I thought, here it is. The same logic that ran through my entire childhood like a hairline fracture in the foundation. Garrett's needs as a given. Mine as a negotiation. I'll think about it, I said. I did not think about it. What I did instead was go home to my apartment on Minerva Avenue and pull out the copy of the will Patricia had given me and read it twice. Then I opened my laptop and looked up the Franklin County Auditor's property records for the house on Sycamore Hill Road. Property records are public. Most people don't know this. You can look up any address, see the ownership history, the assessed value, the transfer dates. It takes about 4 minutes if you know where to look. I know where to look. The record showed a deed transfer. 11 days before my mother's death. Sole ownership transferred to Garrett Roy Okonkwo. I read it 3 times. Then I sat very still in my kitchen for a long time, listening to the refrigerator hum and the sound of a neighbor's television through the wall, and I ran through every possible explanation that wasn't the one I was looking at. There weren't any. The Franklin County Recorder's Office is on Mound Street in downtown Columbus, a building that smells like recycled air and old paper and the particular institutional neutrality of government work. I was there at 2:15 the following Wednesday, having taken a half-day from Mercy Regional by telling my supervisor I had a family legal matter, which was accurate. The clerk's name was a woman named Sandra, according to her lanyard, with reading glasses on a beaded chain and the unhurried precision of someone who has processed 10,000 documents and will process 10,000 more. I gave her the address. She typed. She looked at her screen. She typed again. The deed transfer on this property, she said without looking up. That was recorded 11 days ago. I know, I said. Can you tell me what documents were filed? She printed the packet. I stood at the counter and read it. A quitclaim deed transferring my mother's interest in the property to Garrett. Signed according to the document by Dolores Okonkwo. 11 days before she died. During a week I knew from the hospice nurse's records and from my own presence in that house, that my mother had been on continuous sedation and had not been signing documents. Had not been capable of signing documents. And below my mother's signature on the transfer deed, a co-signer line for the existing equity loan. My name, Nadia Okonkwo. My signature. I had not signed anything. Not one page. I didn't look up from the paper. I didn't make a sound. I folded the copy Sandra had printed, put it in my manila folder and said, "Thank you." She said, "You're welcome." I walked to my car and I sat in the driver's seat and I called Patricia Vance. Here is what Patricia told me and what I want you to understand about what came next. This was not a gray area. A forged signature on a real estate document is mortgage fraud. It is a felony. It does not matter who signed it. It does not matter what family story surrounds it. The law is not interested in the narrative that Garrett had constructed around his own need. The story in which he was the one who deserved the foundation, the one who needed something solid, the one for whom the rules were always meant to flex. The law is interested in the document. Patricia referred me to a real estate attorney named Hugh Adeyemi whose office was on East Broad Street, and I met with him the following Monday morning with the deed packet, the will, my copy of the hospice records, and a folder I had assembled over the weekend of every text and voicemail from my father in the week after the funeral, including the one where he said, "Just let Garrett have the house, you'll be compensated fairly," which now had a clarified meaning. Hugh looked at the documents for a long time without speaking. "This is a clean forgery," he said finally. "Somebody spent time on this." "I know. Your options are civil action to void the deed, or criminal referral to the Franklin County DA or both." "Both," I said. He looked at me. Both, I said again. I want to tell you about the vulnerability here because I owe you that honesty and because I think it's the part that actually matters. The night after I met with Hugh, I drove to Sycamore Hill Road and parked in front of the house. It was a Thursday in March, cold and clear, and the maple tree in the front yard was still bare, just the dark skeleton of it against the sky. The porch light was on. Garrett's truck was in the driveway. I sat there for a long time. I thought about my mother's fabric softener smell. The butterscotch dish. The way she called every Sunday at 7 p.m. and meant it. I thought about what it would cost to pursue this. The legal fees. Hugh had estimated $8,000 to $15,000 for the civil action alone. The time, the family destruction that was already in motion but would now become official and documented and irreversible. Thought about Garrett. Not with sympathy exactly, but with something more complicated. The recognition that he was a person shaped by the same father who had told me in a parking lot that boys needed to build something. I had been shaped by that too, just differently. I had internalized the message as, then I will build something they can't take. Garrett had internalized it as, then I am owed something and I will take it. Neither of us had chosen our formation. That didn't make what he did acceptable. But it made it legible. And still, my mother's name was on a forged document. Her signature, imitated badly enough that I could see the difference immediately. The slightly wrong slant of the D, the way the loop of the L didn't match her handwriting on 30 years of birthday cards. Someone had practiced. Someone had tried. That was the part that undid me in the car on Sycamore Hill Road. Not the money. Not even the house. The fact that he had practiced her signature. I drove home. I transferred a retainer of $8,500 to Hugh's office account the next morning. I did not hesitate. The deed was voided 6 weeks later through a Franklin County civil court order. Hugh filed the criminal referral the same day. The DA's office opened a fraud investigation. My father called me 4 times in the 2 days after Garrett received the civil complaint. I answered once. You're destroying this family, he said. Garrett destroyed this family, I said. I'm just filing the paperwork. He needed. He forged Mom's signature. He forged mine. On a mortgage document. Dad, those are felonies. Silence. She would not have wanted this, he said finally. The weaponized grief of a man who had not spoken to my mother in 6 years and was now fluent in her presumed wishes. She wrote a will, I said. She was very specific about what she wanted. I have the document. I hung up. Garrett called once 2 days after the civil complaint, from a number I didn't recognize. I knew it was him from the first word. Nadia. Come on. I was going to tell you. Garrett. I was going to give you your share once I got the refinance sorted out. I just needed time to. Garrett. He stopped. Don't call me again until you've spoken to an attorney, I said. And not about money. About your exposure. I hung up. I didn't feel victorious. I want to be clear about that. There was no satisfaction in the phone calls. No relief in having said the right thing. Just the exhausted certainty of a person doing the only thing available to them. The house went back into the estate. Patricia Vance managed the process. We listed it 8 months later, in November, when the market in Worthington was strong and the maple in the front yard had gone full orange and gold. And it sold in 11 days for $362,000, $22,000 over the assessed value. My share, $181,000. I put $140,000 into a down payment on a 2-bedroom house on Fenwick Road in Bexley, a neighborhood I had wanted to live in since I was 24 and understood that wanting things was allowed. The remaining $41,000 went into an investment account my financial advisor, a woman named Courtney Bells, had been recommending for 2 years while I nodded and said soon. Soon had arrived. Garrett's criminal case was still pending as of the last update I received from Hugh. He had hired his own attorney. The process was slow as these things are. I had stopped needing it to be fast. My coworker at Mercy Regional, a woman named Priya Suresh in patient accounts, had watched the whole arc of this from the adjacent desk. The days I came in quiet, the morning I left early to meet with Hugh, the afternoon I got the voiding order and sat at my desk for 10 minutes without moving. She never asked. She brought me coffee without comment on the hard days. A small active witness I have thought about more than she probably knows. The subplot, as I've come to think of it, was Priya and the question of what it means to be seen by someone who isn't required to see you, Not family, not lawyer, not the system processing your claim. Just a person who noticed and said nothing and showed up anyway. In a year full of people loudly asserting entitlement to things that weren't theirs, that quiet showing up was not a small thing. Here's what I learned. 1. A document is only as safe as the people who know it exists. Get the copies. Know the public records. Do not assume that what was written down is what will be honored without your active attention. 2. He needs it more than you do, is not a legal argument. It is not a moral argument. It is not, in the end, even an emotional argument. It is just a sentence that benefits the person saying it. 3. The grief and the legal case are not the same thing. You can be gutted by losing your mother and still walk into the recorder's office. You can cry in a car on Sycamore Hill Road and still wire the retainer the next morning. Falling apart and moving forward are not opposites. They happen in the same body on the same days and both are real. The house on Fenwick Road has a porch I didn't expect to love as much as I do. I sit there on Sunday mornings with coffee and sometimes I call my mother's friend Vivian Carr, who was her closest friend for 20 years and who still talks about Dee the way people talk about someone they miss with uncompromising